If you'd asked me 5 years ago who I was in my family, I would have said the responsible one. The one who always remembers birthdays, who double-checks that the bills are paid, who shows up early to set up for every family event and stays late to clean up afterward. I was the one who could be relied on to pick up the pieces when someone else dropped them. I didn't resent it, at least not at first. I thought that was just how families worked. Someone had to be the glue, right? I'm the oldest of 3. My brother Jake is 4 years younger than me, and my sister Lily is 7 years younger. Growing up, Jake was always the golden child, charming, funny, a little reckless, but everyone seemed to find it endearing. Lily was the baby, the one we all doted on, the one my parents said could do no wrong. I was the steady one, the background character in my own life sometimes, but I didn't mind. Or maybe I just convinced myself I didn't. My parents, especially my mom, leaned on me a lot. She was always busy, working 2 jobs when we were little, then going back to school when I was in high school. My dad was around but not really present. He worked long hours, and when he was home he mostly watched TV or tinkered with his car in the garage. So when something needed doing, laundry, dinner, helping Lily with her homework, it was me. I learned to cook before I was 10, because Jake refused to eat anything that wasn't chicken nuggets or mac and cheese, and my mom didn't have time to make separate meals. I walked Lily to school every morning, even when it meant being late for my own classes. I gave up after-school clubs so I could babysit so my mom could pick up extra shifts. I became the default adult in the room before I was even a teenager. I didn't realize how much I resented it until much later. When I went away to college, I thought things would change. I was the first in my family to go. My parents were proud, but also a little distant about it, as if they weren't quite sure what to do with the fact that I was leaving. Jake got into trouble a lot that year. Nothing serious, just typical teenage stuff, but it was enough to keep my parents distracted. Lily missed me, but she was getting older, more independent. Still, every crisis at home ended up in my lap. My mom would call me at all hours. Jake's failing math, can you talk to him? Lily's upset because her friend isn't speaking to her. Can you FaceTime her? I can't figure out how to file these forms for your dad's insurance, can you help? I'd spend hours on the phone, walking them through everything from homework to health insurance. I'd skip study sessions to help Lily with her essays, or to talk Jake down after he'd gotten into yet another fight with my dad. I told myself it was normal, that this was what family did for each other. But deep down I noticed that no one ever asked Jake or Lily to help with anything. When Jake flunked a class, everyone rallied to help him make up the credits. When Lily wanted to audition for a school play, my parents rearranged their schedules to drive her to rehearsals. When I needed something, help moving out of my dorm, a ride to the airport, even just someone to listen, everyone was too busy. I started to feel invisible. After college, I moved back home for a year to save money. I got a job in a neighboring city, commuted an hour each way, and still ended up being the one to cook dinner most nights. My parents expected me to help out with bills, which I did without complaint. Jake was in community college, still living at home, working part-time at a coffee shop. Lily was finishing high school, busy with friends and activities. I was the only one with a full-time job, so it made sense I told myself to contribute more. But it never felt like enough. If I was late coming home, my mom would text me, "Are you picking up groceries?" If I wanted to go out with friends, I'd come home to find a list of chores waiting for me. If Jake or Lily needed a ride, it was always assumed I'd drop everything and take care of it, even if it meant rearranging my own plans. The breaking point came a year later, when I got a job offer in another state. It was my dream job, working for a nonprofit I'd admired since college, doing work that actually meant something to me. The pay wasn't amazing, but it was enough to live on, and the opportunities for growth were huge. I was excited, nervous, and if I'm honest, relieved. I thought maybe finally I could have a life of my own. When I told my family, the reaction was complicated. My mom cried. She said she was happy for me, but I could tell she felt betrayed. "Who's going to help with everything?" she asked. "Jake and Lily aren't ready to be on their own." My dad barely said anything, just nodded and went back to his newspaper. Jake shrugged and said, "Guess I'll have to learn how to cook now." But I could tell he didn't really believe I was leaving. Lily was the only one who seemed genuinely happy for me. She hugged me and said she couldn't wait to visit. I tried to set boundaries. I told my parents I'd help them get organized before I left. write out instructions for bills, show them how to use online banking, make a meal plan for Jake. I offered to help Lily with her college applications over Zoom. I wanted to make the transition as easy as possible. But every time I tried to pull back, my mom would guilt-trip me. You know your brother can't handle things on his own. Your father's hopeless with paperwork. I just don't know what we'll do without you. The week before I was supposed to move, my dad's car broke down. My mom called me at work frantic. You need to come home now. Your dad's stranded. I left work early, drove across town to pick him up, and spent the rest of the evening calling tow trucks and mechanics. When I got home, my mom was waiting with a list of things she needed help with: groceries, laundry, paying the utility bill online. I was exhausted, but I did it all because that's what I'd always done. That night, lying in bed, I realized I was angry. Not just tired, not just overwhelmed, angry. Angry that I was expected to put my life on hold again because no one else wanted to step up. Angry that my dreams were always second to everyone else's needs. Angry that, after all these years, I was still the backup plan. I wish I could say that realization made everything easier. It didn't. If anything, it made the next week even harder. Every time my mom asked me for something, I felt that anger simmering under the surface. Every time Jake or Lily shrugged off a responsibility, I wanted to scream. But I kept it together because I didn't want to leave on bad terms. The night before my move, we had a family dinner. My mom made my favorite meal, lasagna, and everyone was there. It should have felt like a celebration, but it felt more like a funeral. My mom kept tearing up, my dad was silent, Jake barely looked at me, and Lily was the only one who tried to keep things light. After dinner, my mom pulled me aside and said, "You know you can always come home, right? We'll always need you." I smiled and hugged her, but inside I knew things had to change. For once I was choosing myself. I was terrified, but also for the first time in my life hopeful. Moving day arrived with the kind of heaviness that settles in your chest and refuses to budge. I woke up before dawn, not because I set an alarm, but because my mind wouldn't let me sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint sounds of the house, the creak of pipes, the hum of the refrigerator, the occasional snore from my dad down the hall. It struck me how familiar everything was, how every detail of this house was etched into my memory. The faded wallpaper in the hallway, the chipped tile in the bathroom, the way the front door stuck in the summer humidity. I'd spent my entire life in these walls, and now I was about to leave them behind. I got up quietly and started packing the last of my things. Most of my boxes were already stacked by the front door, labeled in my neat handwriting: kitchen, books, winter clothes, miscellaneous. I'd spent the past week sorting through my belongings in the evenings, after work and after whatever new emergency the family had thrown my way that day. I tried to be methodical, but there was a part of me that wanted to leave something behind. A sweater, a book, a coffee mug. Something that would say, I was here. But I knew better. If I left anything, it would just become another responsibility for me to deal with later. Another reason for my mom to call and say, "You forgot this, can you come get it?" The house was quiet that morning. My dad had already left for work. He'd said his goodbyes the night before, awkwardly, with a pat on the shoulder and a "drive safe, kid." Jake was still asleep, or at least pretending to be. Lily, sweet as ever, had woken up early to help me load the car. She made coffee and we sat together on the porch, mugs warming our hands, watching the sun rise over the neighbor's sagging fence. "You're really going?" she said softly, not looking at me. "Yeah," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "I think I have to." She nodded, and for a long moment neither of us spoke. I wanted to tell her everything I was feeling. That I was scared, that I felt guilty for leaving her, that I was angry at our parents for making me feel like I was abandoning them. But I didn't. I just squeezed her hand and tried to memorize the way the light caught in her hair. When my mom finally woke up, she was all business. She bustled around the kitchen making breakfast, packing snacks for the road, double-checking that I had my charger and my keys and the directions to my new apartment. She didn't cry, not then. She just kept talking, her voice a little too bright, a little too loud. I let her fuss over me because I knew it was her way of coping. But when it came time to actually say goodbye, she broke down. She hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe and whispered, "Don't forget us. Don't forget where you came from." I promised I wouldn't, even though a part of me wanted to. Jake appeared just as I was about to leave. He looked tired, maybe even a little guilty. He mumbled something about wishing me luck, then added, "Guess I'll have to learn how to do laundry now, huh?" I tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. I wanted him to say more, to acknowledge everything I'd done for him, but he just shoved his hands in his pockets and stared at the floor. I hugged Lily one last time, promised her she could visit any time, and got in the car. As I pulled out of the driveway, I glanced in the rearview mirror. My mom stood on the porch wiping her eyes. Lily waved, her smile shaky. Jake had already disappeared inside. I felt a pang of something, grief maybe, or relief, or both. The drive to my new city was long, but it felt like I was crossing an invisible threshold with every mile. The further I got from home, the lighter I felt. I played music loud, sang along off-key, let the wind whip through the open window. I thought about the life waiting for me. A tiny apartment, a job that mattered, new friends I hadn't met yet. For the first time in years, the future felt like it belonged to me. My new place was nothing fancy. A one-bedroom walk-up in an old brick building, with creaky floors and a view of a fire escape. But it was mine. I spent the first night sleeping on an air mattress, surrounded by boxes, eating takeout Chinese straight from the carton. I should have felt lonely, but instead I felt peaceful, like I could finally exhale. The first week at my new job was a blur of introductions, training sessions, and awkward small talk in the break room. I threw myself into the work, eager to prove myself, to build something of my own. My coworkers were friendly, if a little reserved. I went to lunch with a few of them, laughed at their jokes, tried to remember everyone's names. It was exhausting, but in a good way, a kind of tired that came from doing something for myself, not for someone else. But even as I settled into my new routine, my family never really let go. My mom called every evening, sometimes twice. At first, she just wanted to check in, to make sure I was eating, to ask about my job. But soon, the calls turned into requests for help. "Can you walk me through paying the electric bill online again? Jake's having trouble with his car insurance. Can you call the company for him? Lily's stressed about her college essays. Can you read them over for her?" I tried to set boundaries gently at first. "Mom, I'm really busy with work right now, but I can send you instructions. Jake needs to call the insurance himself. They won't talk to me anyway. Lily can email me her essays, but I might not get to them right away." But every time I pushed back, my mom would sigh or get quiet or say something like, "I guess we'll just have to figure it out on our own." The guilt would creep in, as always, and I'd find myself caving, staying up late to edit Lily's essays, spending my lunch break on hold with the electric company. It wasn't just my mom. Jake started texting me for help with everything: how to cook pasta, how to unclog the sink, how to write a cover letter for a job application. He'd never had to figure these things out before, because I'd always done it for him. Lily, sweet as she was, called me whenever she had a fight with a friend or needed advice on what classes to take. I loved her, but sometimes I just wanted to turn off my phone and disappear. A month after I moved, my dad called me for the first time. He's never been much of a talker, so I was surprised. He asked about my job, my apartment, the weather. Then, almost as an afterthought, he said, "Your mom's been pretty upset. She says the house feels empty without you." I didn't know what to say. I wanted to tell him I felt empty too sometimes, that I missed them, but I didn't miss the way I'd always been needed, never wanted. Instead, I just said, "I'm doing okay, Dad." Really? The calls and texts kept coming. I started to dread the sound of my phone buzzing. Every notification felt like a reminder that, no matter how far I went, I was still the backup plan. The one they turned to when things got hard, when no one else wanted to step up. I tried to push back, to set firmer boundaries, but the guilt was overwhelming. My mom would cry, Jake would sulk, Lily would sound so disappointed. It was easier to just give in. But then something changed. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, I came home to find a letter in my mailbox. It was from my boss. A handwritten note, thanking me for going above and beyond on a recent project. She wrote that she could see how much I cared, how hard I worked, and that she was excited to see what I would accomplish. I sat on the floor of my apartment, holding that note, and cried. Not because I was sad, but because it was the first time in a long time that someone had seen me, not for what I could do for them, but for who I was. That night, I made a decision. I couldn't keep living my life for other people, no matter how much I loved them. I deserved to be more than the backup plan. I deserved to choose myself. It's strange how a single moment of clarity can change the course of your life. Sitting on the floor of my tiny apartment, clutching that note from my boss, I felt something inside me shift. I realized that for the first time, someone had acknowledged me for my own efforts, not for what I could fix or smooth over for someone else. I wasn't just a problem solver or a stand-in parent or the responsible one. I was a person with my own dreams and value, someone worth seeing. That night, I turned my phone off before bed. I know that doesn't sound revolutionary, but for me it was. I'd always kept it on just in case my family needed something. But that night, I decided my rest mattered too. The next day, I woke up to a string of missed calls and texts. My mom asking if I was okay. Jake complaining about a broken washing machine. Lily asking if I could help her with a scholarship essay. Just real quick. For a moment, the old guilt flared up, but I took a deep breath and reminded myself, I am not responsible for everyone else's happiness. I called my mom first. I told her I loved her and that I was okay, but that I needed to set some boundaries. I can't always be available, I said, my voice shaking. I have my own life here now. I need you and everyone else to try to solve things on your own before coming to me. There was a long silence on the other end. I braced myself for tears, for guilt, for the familiar ache in my chest. Instead, my mom surprised me. She sighed, and I could hear the exhaustion in her voice. I know, honey. I guess I got used to having you take care of everything. I'm sorry. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was more than I'd expected. With Jake, it was harder. He was annoyed, sulky, and accused me of abandoning the family. You think you're better than us now? He snapped. I told him no, but I also told him he needed to start figuring things out for himself. You're an adult, Jake. You can Google how to fix a washing machine, or call a repairman. I believe in you. He hung up on me, and for the rest of the day, I felt like the worst sister in the world. Lily was the easiest. She's always been more understanding, maybe because she's felt invisible in her own ways. When I explained that I couldn't always drop everything to help, she said, I get it. I'll try to do more on my own. But can I still call you when I really need you? I laughed, real genuine laughter, and told her of course. It wasn't a clean break. For weeks, my family tested my boundaries. My mom would call, and if I didn't answer, she'd text, Please, I just need 5 minutes. Jake would send me angry messages, then nothing for days. Lily would ask for help, then apologize for bothering me. I stuck to my plan. If it wasn't urgent, I let it wait. If it was something they could figure out themselves, I encouraged them to try. I stopped dropping everything for everyone else. It was hard. Some days the guilt gnawed at me. I worried I was being selfish, that I was letting my family down. But slowly things started to change. My mom learned how to pay bills online. Jake figured out how to cook pasta, even if he did set off the smoke alarm a few times. Lily started making decisions on her own, and even told me about a time she stood up for herself at school. And I started living. Really living. I made friends at work, went to trivia nights and movie marathons, learned the best coffee shops in my new city. I read books for pleasure, not just to escape. I started dating a nice guy from the nonprofit who listened when I talked and never expected me to fix his life. I even took a weekend road trip by myself just because I could. My family didn't fall apart without me. They struggled, sure, but they adapted. And our relationships, while different, became more honest. When I visited for Thanksgiving, my mom didn't hand me a list of chores. Instead, she hugged me at the door and let me just be her daughter. Jake and I talked about his job, not about what he needed me to do for him. Lily and I stayed up late laughing about old times, and for once I felt like a sister, not a second mother. I realized that by always being the backup plan, I'd robbed my family of the chance to grow. I'd made myself indispensable but also invisible. By stepping back, I gave them and myself the room to become more. Now, when people ask me about my family, I tell them the truth. We're close, but I have my own life now. I love them, but I don't live for them. I'm not the backup plan anymore. I'm the main character in my own story. And for the first time, that's enough. Months passed, and I settled more deeply into my new life. There were still moments when the old patterns tried to creep back in, like muscle memory that's hard to shake. Sometimes, out of habit, I'd reach for my phone to check on everyone before realizing I didn't have to. The silence that followed was uncomfortable at first, almost like a withdrawal. I'd spent so many years measuring my worth by how useful I was to others that it took time to recognize my value outside of that role. There were nights when I'd lie awake, replaying old conversations in my head, wondering if I'd done the right thing. I'd remember the look on my mom's face when I told her I was leaving, or the way Jake's voice cracked when he accused me of abandoning them. Guilt is a stubborn shadow. It lingers even when you know you're walking in the light. But each day the weight of it grew a little lighter. I started to trust that my family could handle more than I'd given them credit for. At work I flourished. My boss's note had been just the beginning. I got more responsibilities, led a small project, and even mentored a new hire. For the first time I was seen as a leader, not just a helper. My coworkers came to me for advice, but they also invited me out for coffee, shared their stories, and celebrated my successes. I felt a sense of belonging that I'd never quite found at home. One Saturday I woke up to sunlight streaming through my window and realized I had no obligations. No chores, no errands, no one waiting for me to solve their problems. I brewed coffee, curled up with a book, and let myself enjoy the quiet. It was such a simple pleasure, but it felt revolutionary. I started making a list of things I wanted to do. Not for anyone else, but for myself. Take a pottery class. Go hiking. Learn to make my grandmother's soup from scratch. The list grew, and so did my sense of possibility. My relationship with my family continued to evolve. My mom and I talked more honestly. She admitted that she'd leaned on me too much, that she hadn't realized how much I'd sacrificed. There were still moments of tension, old habits die hard, but there was also a new kind of respect. Jake, after a few rocky months, started to open up about his own struggles. He confessed that he'd always felt like he couldn't measure up, that my competence had made him feel small. It wasn't easy to hear, but it helped me see him as more than just the golden child. Lily, ever my confidant, told me how proud she was that I'd chosen myself. She said it gave her permission to do the same. I visited home less often, but when I did, the visits were sweeter. We made new memories, cooking together, going for walks, watching old movies. I no longer felt trapped by obligation. I was there because I wanted to be. My family began to see me as a whole person, not just a role to be filled. And I saw them more clearly too, not as burdens but as people learning and growing in their own imperfect ways. Looking back now, I'm grateful for the years I spent as the backup plan. They taught me resilience, compassion, and the importance of showing up for others. But I'm even more grateful that I finally showed up for myself. I learned that love isn't about self-sacrifice to the point of invisibility. It's about being present, honest, and whole with your family and with yourself. I'm still a work in progress. Some days the urge to fix everything for everyone is strong. But now I pause, breathe, and remember. I deserve to take up space, to have dreams, to be seen. My family's story is still unfolding, but for the first time, I'm writing my own chapter. And that, more than anything, feels like coming home.